I want to call this meeting of the New Hanover County Board of Education to order. I'd ask everyone, excuse me, please stand for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the singing of the national anthem. We will begin by the invocation. Gracious God, granter of all things great and small, we come before you with this humble invocation. We pray for your support for all those who are present. We pray for our soldiers, our sailors, and our airmen, that you will keep them safe, whether they're in the country or abroad. Watch over them. We pray that they will return to their families safely. We pray for the families that are left at home, that you will strengthen them in these times of separation. We pray for your blessing on this assembly. Guide us in our discussion. Help us to make decisions that best serve the educational needs of our children in our public schools. We ask for your blessings for our president. We ask for your blessings upon the leaders of our county and state. We ask that they may be guided to help improve the education for our children. During this time of the year, we ask for your blessings on everyone present, that through your grace and mercy, that all may find peace. This we humbly pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, I am Bay Alabach, and I go to Ogden Elementary.
Everybody may be seated.
I am Sophia Lukashik, and I go to Ogden Elementary. I'm Kendall Hayes, and I go to Ogden Elementary. I'm Sarah Rudisiel, and I go to Holly Tree Elementary.
I'm Lainey Watkins, and I go to Coddington Elementary.
I'm Emma Span, and I go to Coddington Elementary. I'm Gabby Alfredo, and I go to Coddington Elementary.
I'm Dylan Gowdy, and I go to Pine Valley Elementary.
I'm Sophie Zamora, and I go to Anderson Elementary. I'm Kylie Heath, and I go to Anderson Elementary.
I'm Ava McNeely, and I go to Coddington Elementary.
I'm Ashley Drees, and I go to Holly Tree Elementary.
I'm Lindsay LaRiviere, and I go to Holly Tree Elementary.
I'm Emma Gordon, and I go to Coddington Elementary.
I'm Jonathan Studebaker, and I go to Eaton Elementary.
I'm Cameron Steinhauer, and I go to Eaton Elementary. I'm Jada Ward, and I go to Blair Elementary. I'm Molly Mathis, and I go to Pine Valley Elementary.
And as you folks can see, these students come from all over the place tonight, so if you are one of their instructors, would you please stand to be recognized tonight? I think we've got most of them back there in the back. Thank you.
I'm Arthur Sawyer. I go to Laney High School.
I'm Alexander White, and I go to Laney High School.
I am Jared Glenn, and I go to Laney High School.
I am Ashley Reese, and I go to Laney High School.
I'm John Stanley, and I go to Laney High School.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Just for the record, the national anthem was sung by the North Carolina Elementary Honors Chorus. Susan Gardner was the. It's the all county? Honors. Okay. And the posting of colors was obviously by Laney High School, Air Force ROTC. Ms. Deschamps is the principal. The instructors are Colonel Thomas Harrison Smith and Master Sergeant Bruce C.
Could we have the principals of the elementary schools that were represented to stand?
Well, I didn't have it here, but I can. If you are a principal of one of the elementary schools that was present here, would you raise your hand or?
Please stand.
Or stand or? Thank you. All right, Ms. Adams, would you call the roll? Here.
Matt S. Nichols.
Here.
Dennis A. Kavanaugh.
Here.
Lisa Easton.
Here.
Thomas S. Hayes.
Here.
Bruce T. Shea.
Here.
David L. Wharton.
Here.
You have before you the agenda. Are there any additions or modifications to the agenda?
No, sir.
If not, then do I hear a motion that we approve the agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It is approved. We have the approval of the minutes of the special meeting from November 7th, 2017. Do I hear a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any corrections or changes? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
They are approved. Next item on our agenda is recognition of achievement. So if everybody would come out so we can shake hands and everything.
First, we have a partnership presentation.
Oh, you got
Emergency.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Good evening, everyone. We're so delighted that you are with us tonight. We will begin our recognition this evening by highlighting our community partnership with a very special organization, Nourish North Carolina. And at this time, I would like to introduce you to the Executive Director, Mr. Steve McCrossin, and he will share with you the programs that Nourish North Carolina has in place and the wonderful things that they do with the students here in New Hanover County Schools. Steve?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, I should say. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for inviting me today. Again, my name is Steve McCrossin. I'm the Executive Director of Nourish NC. I'm just going to take a few minutes to share with you what our partnership looks like here in New Hanover County Schools. So our mission is to provide healthy food to hungry children here in New Hanover County, empowering them to succeed in the classroom and in their community. In a nutshell, we want to put healthy food in these kids' bellies so they do well when they're in class and they're good, active participants in their community. I can't seem to get that to go. Anybody? Want to hit a slide for me? Okay, a little background information. We did start in 2008 in one school. We started at Carolina Beach Elementary. Some concerned parents came together, heard children were struggling with food insecurity on the weekends. They started packing bags for 20 kids. Fast forward till today, we are in 36 New Hanover County schools. Any information I give today is only relevant to New Hanover County schools. We now serve children in other schools that aren't this county. So Glow Academy, Douglas Academy, for example, are not included in these numbers. So today we are close to 900 children in New Hanover County schools that we serve. We do have a memorandum of understanding with this Board of Education to operate in all of those schools. We're just under a $500,000 operating budget, with a large part of that being in-kind donated food. We are a small staff of 3, governed by a board of 11 volunteer board of directors. What we do takes a lot of work from the community, about 5,000 hours a year of packing bags, of packing food boxes, of delivering these bags to your schools. So we're very heavily reliant upon the community to make our programs hum. We are financially secure and transparent. Every year we are audited or reviewed by Ernie & Company, a local CPA and auditing firm, and we do have at least 6 months reserves at any given time should something happen to protect our children from shock. 99.9% of our money is private. Businesses, grants, donations, foundations. We get about $4,000 from the county for the first time ever this year. And all of our services are offered to all of your children at no charge. So, go back here. We're most known for the backpack program. So this is designed for K through 5 kids. Bags like this are packed by volunteers. This contains 8 meals, 7 snacks, juice, milks, and produce. And it's delivered to schools every Thursday, where your personnel are then putting these in kids' backpacks while they're in gym or outside of the classroom, so no one else knows they're on the program. Some schools are as small as 5 children, like Howe Pre-K, 5 kids. Some schools are over 60, something like Gregory. So the range of kids in the schools can vary significantly. We are in 36 schools, but we've offered it to any school that wants it at this point. Some don't need it. And Nourish NC doesn't enroll anyone. The social workers, the school nurses, the administrators in your schools do all of the enrollments. And the only thing the parent has to do is sign an agreement form, an enrollment form, that allows us to communicate with them and to let their child participate in the backpack program. And this picture up there, you see that's drawn in the sun, is one of your kids doing a drawing during our evaluations. So again, these are delivered by school personnel. We feed these children every single weekend, so 8 meals, 7 snacks, juice, produce every weekend. But we also know that when they're on long school breaks, they are particularly in need of food. Holiday break is coming up. Every child in our program will get a holiday break box, and that covers them 3 meals a day for the entire school break, plus produce, meat, and this year comes with a big stocking. And those are actually kids in New Hanover County schools holding their bags right there. And that's a picture of what goes actually in the bag. A big push for us has been more healthy, fresh foods. This past year we did 65,000 pounds of fresh produce for kids in your schools. So it looks a little different in middle and high school. As the kids get older, K through 5 kids, 96% of them report not being embarrassed. That changes when they get to middle school, right? So kids get monthly boxes. And we don't go into the school and tell the social worker how it's going to work. We ask them how they want it to work. So we will deliver these boxes to schools. We will deliver it to parents' homes, or parents can pick up at our warehouse. We're actually right here on Greenfield, so we're right down the street from y'all. So we let the social worker decide how the program can be run. And again, that box is to feed them every single weekend over the entire month. And again, all of these children, all 900 children in New Hanover County schools get break boxes. This past 2 years, we've also given Thanksgiving dinner to every child in our program. Typically, we focus on the health effects and academic effects of healthy eating, but we also want our children to have dinner around the table with their families. So this past 2 years, every child in our program receives what we call a take and bake Thanksgiving dinner with everything they need to have a Thanksgiving dinner with their family, as you can see in that photo. We started doing Farmers Markets. This is a direct, hands-on approach to bringing healthy food right into the communities that need it most, particularly food deserts and Title I schools. So this is, again, free of charge, and we will bring thousands of pounds of farm fresh produce to the school, provide the kids with Nourish Bucks, which you can see in that photo. That child is purchasing broccoli there. And we encourage the schools to work this into their curriculum and to work this into their events. So we were at Bradley Creek's Fall Fest, we were at Johnson Spring Fest. You can see in this next photo, we were just recently at Wrightsboro Elementary for Hispanic Heritage Month, and we did a veggie tostada farmers market so they could tie it into their curriculum. And so we've also recently partnered with NHRMC to review the nutritional contents of all of our materials, particularly the backpack, but also to fund more farmers markets in Title I schools, and in particular on the north side. They are very interested in funding our kids on the north side. And there's just a couple more photos of kids shopping. Pantry Pals, this is a program we also added last year. This is for any school who either wants an emergency food pantry. I use the word pantry lightly because space is a commodity for some schools. In some cases, that's a drawer. In other more fortunate cases, that's a closet. We don't just send anything. We let the social worker or school nurse decide what they want, and we ship that to them free of charge. We also routinely send snacks to all of our schools to be used in any of the classrooms. So this picture here is we send snacks to Gregory for every single classroom every week, every day, all year round. And again, that is available for any school. The school personnel are really the backbone of this program. Without your school social workers, your family counselors, this program doesn't work. They are literally the ones who are identifying these children. They're the ones who are filling out the paperwork, and they are, like you see Claire here, the ones who are going out and putting those backpacks inside of the children's bags. So without your school personnel, particularly the social workers, our program wouldn't exist. They are the backbone. And then lastly, just a couple numbers. This is last fiscal year's impact. Again, over 800 children served. We distributed more than 26,000 backpacks to New Hanover County School children. Over 2,000 break boxes, so that's holiday, summer, and spring break. Again, we quadrupled our produce last year with 63,000 for a cumulative total of over 460,000 meals distributed to children within the New Hanover County school system. And then it's a couple more photos, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
How do you refrigerate the meats?
So in that case, those can only be picked up at our warehouse. So when the social worker, what you tend to find is the schools that are clustered around us, the parents pick up at our warehouse. So we have freezers, refrigerators there. When we ship to the schools, the gain there is closer to the family, but they lose some of the product. So if we have people who are disabled or don't have transportation, we will deliver everything to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, I would say to you, earlier today we received a presentation on wellness, and a big part of that was the food that many children come to school hungry. And I just want to thank you as a nonprofit for what y'all do to help so many.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate y'all having me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Thanks again, Steve, for being such a great partner with the school district. And next at this time, we have a very special presentation. Mary Hazel will be happy because Sheriff McMahon is here to tell us some really good news.
You're here for Mr. Higgins, right?
Yes. They only wish. They only wish.
Yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to just start by thanking you for allowing me to take a couple minutes this evening, and also publicly thank all of you for the superintendent's office support of us and for all of your support as we work to keep our children safe. That's our future. And to me, nothing's more important than that. And it's something that we do not take lightly at the Sheriff's Office, and it's a privilege and honor to be able to help keep them safe so that they can learn and come and perform and do things like this. I'm also very excited that we were able to give to the schools nearly $133,000, compliments of our drug dealers and people running criminal enterprises. So they're helping with the education also. So it's an honor to be here and to do what we do, and I thank all of you for your partnership and support with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Sheriff.
Nobody gives me any direction.
Where are the cuffs?
Well, Sheriff, it's clearly a win-win when you can get people pushing drugs off the street and the money goes to help the schools. So we thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Sheriff. Next, we will recognize our beautiful elementary honors chorus who sang for us earlier. These wonderful students were selected to be a part of the 2017 North Carolina Elementary Honors Chorus, which is sponsored by the state's Music Educators Association. Each student went through a rigorous audition before being selected to be a part of this prestigious 220-member chorus, which performed in Winston-Salem last month. So I will call each of the students by name, and then I will ask your music teachers to come forward for a picture and to shake hands with our board. So we'll start with Anderson. From Anderson, we have Kylie Heath and Sophie Zamora, and their music teacher is Mr. Jeremy Matthews. Okay, thanks. You can help us with the picture. Okay. From Blair Elementary School, we have Kaylee Harris and Jada Ward, and their music teacher is Amanda Henson. From Coddington Elementary, Emma Gordon, Ava McNeely, Gabriella Alfredo, Emma Span, and Lainey Watkins. And their music teacher is Miss Mary Tyndall. Give that to her. Some of us are a little shy. From Eaton Elementary, Cameron Steinhauer and Alan Studebaker. And their music teacher, Carly Kansler. From Holly Tree Elementary, Ashley Dries, Lindsay LaRiviere, and Sarah Rudisell. And their music teacher is Miss Susan Gardner. From Ogden Elementary, Bay Albach, Kendall Hazel, and Sophia Lukasik. And their music teacher is Miss Lynn Stemke. And our last group comes from Pine Valley Elementary, Dylan Gowdy, Molly Mathis, and their excellent music teacher, Miss Victoria Everts. Congratulations to all the parents and principals of these excellent students. We are proud of them, and we know you are too. Next, we recognize Ms. Nancy Brewer from Winter Park Elementary School. Ms. Brewer has been named New Hanover County's 2017 Exceptional Children's Teacher of Excellence by North Carolina Department of Instruction, and she was recently recognized at the State Conference on Exceptional Children in Greensboro. Ms. Brewer has 36 years of experience and currently serves as the department chairperson. She teaches resource students while supporting students with intensive academic and behavior needs at Winter Park. Additionally, she just earned the Dr. Lucia Carn Scholarship to attend the International Dyslexia Association Conference in Atlanta. This outstanding educator, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Nancy Brewer. We're so fortunate to have teachers like you, Ms. Brewer. Thank you for what you do. And this next recognition is amazing. It's a mouthful, but listen, because it'll just blow your mind. We are recognizing a young lady who was recently represented in the district in the Broadcom Masters National STEM Competition in Washington, D.C. That's a national contest. This student is Reagan Williams, and she's a student at Roland Grice Middle School. Reagan's project was titled Marsh Attacks, which studied the interaction between predators and their prey and the delicate balance of the ecosystem in our salt marshes. Reagan was awarded the Rising Star Award for her project at the 2017 Broadcom Masters National Competition, and she will go on to represent the United States, that's the whole country, at the Broadcom Masters International, and she will act as an official observer of the 2018 Intel ISEF, the world's largest national high school science and engineering fair. So this New Hanover County School students will be representing us on the national and international level. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Reagan Williams. And her principal, Mr. Charlie Broadfoot, is here. Mr. Broadfoot, if you would stand. Congratulations. The next recognition comes from the world of sports. This year, we're pleased to honor the 4A cross-country state champion from New Hanover County Schools, Miss Natalie Tyner. Last month, Natalie represented Laney High School at the state championship in Kernersville, finishing with a 27-second victory against the competition with a time of 17 minutes and 41 seconds. You go, girl. Congratulations to Natalie, to her principal, Ms. Descharm, her parents, her coach, Coach Bobbitt. Would you stand? Wow. Natalie, thanks for being a state champion. And our final recognition this evening comes from DPI. 6 of our schools have been recognized for positive behavior intervention and supports program that's called PBIS. So I will call the principals or school representative to come forward, please. And would you stand with the board for a group picture? From Bradley Creek Elementary, they were named a Green Ribbon School. Accepting for Bradley Creek, Dr. Lauren Keflanitis. Next, Forest Hills Elementary School. Forest Hills was also named a Green Ribbon School, and we would like to ask Ms. Bonnie Hall to come forward. If she's not here, school representative, please come forward for Forest Hills. Congratulations. Next, Williston Middle School, the greatest school under the sun, was named a Green Ribbon School. Mr. Ron Valines is here. Would you please come to accept this award? And your staff. Our next award is for Holly Shelter Middle School, and Holly Shelter has been named a model school. And Holly Shelter's principal is Ms. Jane Kiker. Is Ms. Kiker here or her staff? There they are. Next, Riceboro Elementary has also been named a model school. And if the principal, Ms. Overby, is here, there she is, lovely Ms. Overby. Congratulations. And finally, I think this is the highest award. Pine Valley Elementary School was awarded Exemplar School. Sam Kentowitz is the principal. Or representatives from Pine Valley, are you here? We'll make sure they get their awards like the Academy Awards. So, thank you all so much. Congratulations. And that concludes our recognition ceremony. Thank you all so much for your patience.
No, it's not. Even Dawn's hot.
That doesn't happen too often. I can feel it. Yeah, it's getting cool. I think he was standing up there. Would you like some water?
Thank you. Yes, some sun drop.
All right. Next item on our agenda is call to the audience. I would remind you that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. However, time does not permit dialogue between the board and the community. While the board welcomes residents to share their views, the chairman retains the right to limit discussion on a particular topic when such comments become slanderous or personal in nature. I've had 3 people to sign up. Stephen Treman.
How's everybody tonight?
Fine.
Hi.
Thanks for letting me speak. First question is probably going to come to mind, why am I here, a coach speaking about his own program? And my answer is going to be, I get a lot of parents come to me every day asking me why isn't lacrosse included in playing outside of the conference, outside games away from New Hanover County. So that's why I'm here today. I'm trying to present to the board and try to maybe get you to look into the reasons why we are not allowed to play non-conference games outside the county. I know for a fact this year that several teams have played outside the county non-conference games. One team played in Myrtle Beach this year, a couple played in New Bern and Jacksonville, and those were JV games that were non-conference. It becomes the parents see this, their kids play both sports, and then they go, why aren't you guys allowed to do that? So that's the biggest issue I see in our JV games and not allowed to play. Plus the numbers are so short. We have a very long season and we only get 4 to 7 games in the JV because of the schools that we're allowed to play. There's only so many in the county. So that's about as much as we can play. And so we kind of start losing kids along the way. They get a lot of practice and very little time to actually play the game. And that kind of wears thin on kids, especially the boys. But the girls are another story. I'm more interested, if I can get anything done, is to get something for the girls. The girls have a very limited school base to play. Not all 4 schools in the county play JV lacrosse. And so, sometimes they have 4 games for the whole season. That's it. So we rely heavily on getting teams from outside the county to come play us. And they ask us a question. Can you come and play us now that we've come down and played you? And I have to say no. And eventually, that reciprocity that should be there is going to wear out, and we're going to lose even my good friends from coming here. And that's actually happened. Charlotte Catholic has come down to play us the 4 years that we've had JV lacrosse. This year, they're not coming. It's too much of a drive. They would wish that we could come play them. I had to beg Cardinal Gibbons to come down to play us again this year. And they said they would, but this may be the last year they come down because, again, we can't go and be reciprocity to them, share goodwill. So I think this is a big issue. I know it's a coach speaking of this. We want the moon, we reach for the stars. But I think this is an issue that goes beyond a coach. I mean, this is really about the kids, trying to keep them engaged. And the more games they play, believe it or not, the more you're going to get the kids engaged, the more kids we're going to get involved. And that's kind of the game plan, is trying to keep the kids off the streets, trying to keep them involved in the schools, involved in sports is one great way to keep them on the straight and narrow. So I know you've done so much for lacrosse. You've been, a great backbone to us, and I appreciate everything you've done. I think this is just one little tweak that needs to be addressed, and the inequity that's in the JV game right now, where other teams are being able to do it, and we can't even get, we can't leave at all. Even the county, we can't even leave the state when others can go.
I think we hear where you're coming from, and I think it will be explored.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Laura Beasley.
I am Laura Beasley, and this is my son Jake. who is a sophomore at Hoggard, and I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about the opportunities to allow JV lacrosse to travel out of the county to play other teams. I've actually been involved with the Hoggard lacrosse since 2006 with my older two sons, and at that time there was no JV team. The sport was just beginning to grow. And both of those sons benefited greatly from the experience of playing a sport in high school, including scholarship offers to play in college. In the last few years, this sport has really gained a lot of momentum as it just exploded in this county. Jake has had opportunities to play in rec league since he was 5 years old, which shows you how much the sport has grown. And I was so glad when the board voted several years ago to have JV lacrosse teams, because that means more kids would be able to play on a high school team. And when JV lacrosse was officially mandated, it apparently was decided at that time that the team would not travel outside the county to play other teams. And at that time, I'm sure it was a fair decision, while they waited to make sure that every school had a team in place, and probably for financial reasons, and to see if this program would be successful. Well, it has proven to be successful at all 4 of the area high schools for both men's and women's lacrosse. At Hoggard alone, we have between 35 to 45 players on the JV team. Laney has about 30 some, but if you count all the men's and women's teams in the county, all the high schools, we have several hundred students are affected by this. Typically, our schedule only has them playing about 6 games in a season, and unless the coaches have a relationship with other coaches that are willing to bring their teams here to travel here, since we can't travel there. Let's compare that to the 20-plus games that each of the other JV sports teams do get to play in our county. Volleyball, basketball, football, baseball, softball, soccer, they all got to play between 10, 15, and more than 20 games with the JV team, where we got just 6. And this is just simply not fair. I recently retired after teaching 31 years, the last 12 being here in New Hanover County teaching kindergarten. So fair is a word that came up a lot in our classrooms, because our youngest students certainly seem to understand that concept, even when sometimes as a teacher it was hard for me to see their point, right? But they recognize fairness in certain situations. And I always try to teach them that fair doesn't always mean everyone getting the same thing, but it does mean everyone getting what they need in order to be successful. And when JV lacrosse was added to Hanover County, it was fair to make this provision to see if the JV lacrosse program would be successful, could support the kind of schedule that involved playing teams other counties for financial reasons as well. But now, after several years, it's only fair that we have the same opportunities and advantages that other JV athletes in this county have to play other teams outside the county. Topsail is very close by, and it's starting a JV program this year, so financially it wouldn't be a huge stretch. Right now, we can't even travel there to play them. The JV lacrosse program is now at a point where we need to be able to play teams from other counties in order to continue to be successful. This kind of competition helps our players grow and get stronger. It helps our 9th and 10th graders stay involved in sport, and it's just the right and fair thing to do. Thank you.
Debbie Trafton.
Wasn't sure I'd be able to reach the microphone. Hello, my name is Debbie Trafton, and the last time I was here before the board as a parent was in 2012, when my son, who was about my size at the time, was a freshman at Hoggard. He stood before you alongside a varsity lacrosse player who was literally twice his size. They stood side by side to illustrate how dangerous it would be for my son to play lacrosse on the varsity field, though he had the stick skills to do so. We needed a venue for our younger athletes to play a high school sport, but in a safe yet still competitive format. Because the board approved the JV lacrosse program, my son got that opportunity. He eventually grew, he joined varsity, and was recruited to play Division II lacrosse on both an academic and athletic scholarship. To this day, we remain extremely grateful to the board for bringing JV lacrosse to our schools. When JV lacrosse started 5 years ago, it was an awesome time for our young athletes. JV players got a real coach, they got real equipment, and we didn't have to play county rec or travel lacrosse for them to play the sport that they loved. My son was the first of that JV team's graduating class to participate in a high school college commitment signing day, and it was really special. My next son played high school lacrosse on the JV program and was later part of the Hoggard Varsity's team that made it to the Final Four in the state championships. Those kids got there with the help of the JV program. They fell short of making it to the finals, partly because they don't see the high level of competition that you see when you play outside of Wilmington. My son here played JV last year and hopes to build on his successes to someday win the state championship and play at the college level. My point is this: the sport competition and participation continues to grow, and we as a district need to grow with it so that these college opportunities keep affording themselves to our student athletes. It's time to build on the success that we've had and keep up with the competitive nature of all of our other JV programs who are traveling to compete outside of our 4 traditional high schools. So it's time to give the sport of lacrosse further recognition as a program that's opening many doors to our students. We ask that you please consider allowing JV lacrosse to travel and compete against schools outside of our county, as you have allowed JV soccer, volleyball, basketball, baseball, softball, and football programs to do. And we really just want to thank you so much for your time and your consideration, and we want to thank Dr. Holliday and his athletic directors as well for this consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, administrative personnel. Any administrative personnel?
No.
Okay. Next item then is Head Start. Mr. Schill.
Yes, sir. I'm going to try to do it from here instead of the podium, if that's okay. We have 3 items to present to the board for the audience's benefit. Head Start is a 3- and 4-year-old preschool program, and it's funded by the federal government. But New Hanover County School System takes that on, administers that, and provides indirect cost to support it as well. So it's not totally federal money, but it's the federal funds that do the lion's share. You have in front of you enrollment data, and what you will see are the dynamics of where all those folks come from. And rather than go through that, I thought I'd speak briefly to some of the updates. Head Start does more than just teach children. It is concerned with their wellness. And we had 123 children and 89 adults attended the Fall Festival on November 3rd. The dental mobile unit served 71 children. 99 children were screened for hearing. Of those 99, 10 did not pass the screening test. So it just shows you the value of that exercise. 247 children were screened for vision. 62 of those 247 are identified to need a follow-up exam. 246 children were observed for behavioral observations, resulting in 43 referrals for support. 11 students have started therapy with our school-based mental health. Parent conferences were conducted in every classroom to share academic progress. Those updates are important. It speaks to what Ms. Greer is doing and others, but it's a very positive. We've talked about wellness earlier today and the value and how it helps those young people be successful so that they can compete and not be behind for a lot of reasons. Next item before you is the expenditure report. And as I mentioned earlier, Head Start is a separate program. The Board of Education serves as the board and the fiduciary for that, so we take it very seriously. What we're trying to do with the 1.9, almost $2 million that the federal government provides to support these programs, which we just alluded to. We are 6 months through the year, so you would expect that we'd spent about 50% of our funds. We've spent 42%, which is really on track due to the nature of salaries and benefits and when school starts. But everything appears to be, unless there are questions, we have the expert here as well, but in case there's questions, I'd say that everything is moving right along as it should be. And then the last item that we're required to present to you is to talk to you about in-kind, or what folks like me used to call indirect cost. But it's the support that the school system gives to these federal programs so that the federal government can see that New Hanover County has some skin in the game and that we're supporting those funds and looking for positive outcomes. We have presented to you in the past some of those positive outcomes. We won't talk about those tonight, but those are the 3 items. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sherrill.
Oh, I do have one other item, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Ms. Greer, would you come forward, please? It is all related. She's with Johnson Elementary. Would you talk about the grant that you were notified of?
Sure. The Coastal Carolina Women's Club has decided to fund a $500 grant to beautify our front entrance. It was just very exciting to see a community group support our program. And I would like to thank the woman to my left, Anna Eidelman, for sharing with us what the grant is all about and being our sponsor.
Thank you so much. There are passionate people out there that are working to enhance our success. So, Ms. Eidelman, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it also.
Good.
Anything else?
No, sir, that's it.
Anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Sherrill. Information. 2016-2017 School Accountability Ready Report Appendix D. Dr. Smith.
Yes, good evening. Annually, we bring to the board the New Hanover County Schools Ready Report. This is just but one way that we highlight the wonderful things that our children and teachers and administrators are accomplishing in our building. This evening, we have Ms. Karen Green. She's going to be sharing with you a summary of that report. This report overviews the components of our accountability model for elementary, middle, and high school, and then it also provides the board with some comparison data for districts that are very similar to ours, and also our performance with other schools in the region. So without further delay, Ms. Karen Green.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share our data from the 16-17 school year. We call it the Ready Report because the accountability model in North Carolina focuses on getting students ready for career and ready for college. What I'm going to present tonight is some district level data. The Ready Report that you have in the appendix actually is 2 parts. The first part is district data, and then the second part we have individual school profile pages. So I'm going to be highlighting some district data tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about the Ready Accountability Model components, and then we're going to do some comparisons against the state, against other regions, districts in our region, some similar sized districts, and then also some charter schools. Then we'll go over some trend data for proficiency for math, reading, and science. Then we'll talk specifically about some high school, college, and career readiness measures. So the elementary and middle school model focuses on English language arts in grades 3 through 8, math in grades 3 through 8,
science at grades 5 and 8, and then any end of course high school assessments that students are taking in middle school. In high school, it's a little more complex with a little more emphasis on the career and college ready. So we have our 3 end of course assessments. We also have our graduation rate, and the expectation is that students will graduate within 4 years or sooner. We also have our college readiness assessment, which is the national ACT exam that we administer to all 11th graders in the spring of every year. And the expectation is that the students score at what UNC expects for college admission, and that's a composite of 17. Then also we're asking ourselves about students taking rigorous mathematics courses. So the accountability model for high school also measures the percentage of students that successfully completes North Carolina Math 3, which years ago was considered Algebra 2, but it's a little more rigorous than that. Then we have our Career Readiness National Assessment, which is an ACT Work Keys assessment. And for those career and technical education students who have 4 hours and a career cluster, such as Microsoft or business, they take a Work Keys assessment. And that ensures employers that they have the basic reading, math, and finding information, technical information that they possess in order to access difficult text in some types of manuals in business. Then we also have the graduation project, and that doesn't calculate into any proficiencies or percentages. We just get an endorsement that we do participate as a district in the graduation project. I apologize if I cough. I've had this for about a month. Just the gift that just keeps on giving. So when you talk about accountability measures, it's like a check and balance thing. There are really 2 essential questions that we ask ourselves. The first one is about student performance, and the essential question is, are the students meeting the mark? In other words, are they passing or meeting the level of expectation of performance on the assessment? And the state measures that in achievement levels, and it's achievement level 1 through 5, and that's how it's reported. Achievement levels 3 through 5 are considered proficient, grade level proficient, and achievement levels 4 and 5 is even a higher level of demonstrated proficiency, and that's considered meeting career and college readiness standards. A lot of times we'll take all of the assessments in a school and we'll combine them in terms of the percent of the test scores that met the mark, that met proficiency. And we call that the performance composite. So a lot of times we'll see that one number for a school or for a district, and that's considered the performance composite. Then the other essential question that we have to ask ourselves, in addition to meeting the mark, are we moving the students? Are the students making progress? Because sometimes the students may not meet the mark, but they are making progress. And that's really where the teacher effect comes in. The state's expectation is for 1 year's worth of instruction that there's a year's worth of growth. And that growth is reported as either being met growth, exceeded growth, or not met. So when we're looking at the performance composite for our district versus the state, historically, we have outperformed the state. When you break it down into the end of grade and end of course assessments, us versus the state, we consistently outperform the state. Oftentimes we want to look at our regional counterparts, and we are very competitive in the region.
Ms. Green.
Yes, sir.
When you talk about the test and comparing the district to the state, I think that's pretty easy to figure out. But the test itself, is that a test that is designed by the state of North Carolina? Is that your generic test throughout the state so that when you're comparing apples to apples?
Yes, sir. The tests are developed by the state. There's a test development process that is very highly psychometric. It's a 3 to 4 year process to develop a valid and reliable assessment in any of those subject areas. And teachers also serve on that team. So we take all the experts at DPI, the curriculum experts, the statisticians, and the psychometricians, and then we also include teachers in item writing and then they're tried out and field tested, and then if they perform well, then they're utilized on that state test. So it's a very deliberate and intentional process. That's a 3 to 4 year process. So if you look at us versus similar size districts and other urban districts, again, we're very competitive. We also have a lot of charter schools in our area now, so what we did is we ranked our schools in terms of their performance composite and their school performance grade, and we highlighted the charter schools. So we're very, very proud of our performance in comparison to the charter schools. So just taking a look at some trend data, again, when we compare ourselves to the state, it wasn't just last year. We have a pattern of outperforming the state in English language arts and in math, and this is in terms of proficiency, in terms of meeting that mark, but we're also meeting our targets in most of our subject areas and grades. So that whole idea of growth, we are growing our children. We do have 4th grade math. This year we're working on that because we did not meet the growth mark as a district in 4th grade math. So that's one of the district-wide initiatives that the Instruction and Academic Accountability Division is focusing on under the direction of Dr. Smith and her team. In science, again, outperforming the state, and this is year after year, in 5th and 8th grade science. So in elementary and middle, the only 2 grades we administer a science EOG is in 5th and 8th. In English 2, we outperformed the state. We took a little dip. In Math 1, again, the trend data shows that we're outperforming the state. We took a dip over a couple of years, so one of the initiatives last year in our division was to have our curriculum specialist in math work with the schools across the district on deliberate and intentional professional development surrounded by the formative assessments that we give. A couple times a semester we give a short formative assessment, and they use that assessment data to adjust instruction and to make some changes in the classroom. In biology, we took just a slight dip, but when you look at our growth, remember, because we're looking at both proficiency and growth, when you look at our growth, we exceeded our growth expectation in biology. So in high school, these other career and college readiness indicators, the graduation rate, we're very consistent. We're creeping up year after year. We do have some celebrations in terms of some specific student groups, but even a change in a 10th is really a lot more children, 2 or 3 dozen children, more children that we're graduating. So even though it appears to be baby steps, we're actually making progress. Here's our graduation rate from 13-14 on through 16-17. But when you take a look back at our student groups, when you break it down by student groups, our African American students since 13-14 has had a 6.2% increase in the graduation rate. That's attributed to the fine work that the principals and their graduation coaches and administrative teams and teachers are doing at the high school. And then for our EC students, we've had a 24.2% increase since 2013-14. They done a lot of good.
What are you doing differently too?
Well, the EC department has implemented some job coaches at the high school that particularly work with the occupational course of study students, the students that are going to be going out into the workforce, because their graduation requirement also includes 600 work hours. And so they've developed a transition folder and portfolio process, a data notebook, if you will, that focuses on career planning and then making sure that what my interests are, that my coursework matches that, and that my work hours are scaffolded, not in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, that we're not waiting until 11th or 12th grade to get all those hours in because it is very overwhelming. They've also implemented interview and resume seminars throughout the year, and that was implemented a couple years ago. The ACT in grade 11, we're very proud of our performance. We did take a small dip, and one of the things that our division is doing this year is we've had a parent forum where we've gone over some of the test preps that are free to the students through our Castle Learning online interactive system. And so we're working with schools to try to increase usage in that. Isaac Bear utilized that method test prep last year, and we're very pleased with their results. So we're trying to follow that model in all of our high schools. And we're very competitive with the SAT. The SAT release was a little delayed this year, but we surpass North Carolina and the nation, and we've also detailed our specific high schools for you. Career and technical education also have end-of-course tests. They're not factored into our school performance grades per se, but they do report out, and their district proficiency for all the CTE assessments in high school was 77.1%. We had 1,927 industry credentials that students earned in high school that they can take to the workplace. Things like Microsoft, SafeServe, CPR, all of those kind of workplace readiness skills that will help them in the workplace. Also, we were able to award 636 career readiness certificates based on the student performance on the WorkKeys assessment, and that is a nationwide career readiness certificate that's recognized by businesses all over the country. And in our area, some of these businesses and industries require that they have that credential for employment. So that concludes the district-wide discussion and presentation, and then the second part of that appendix item of the READY report is each individual school report.
I would caution the board that we're about to change the whole process again because ESSA has passed and they're in the middle of writing the rules and regulations. Probably in the February meeting, hopefully we'll have some direction of where they're going with that, and we'll give you an update on what the changes in the accountability model will look like heading into next year.
And the good thing is that Dr. Markley's on the Growth and Advisory Council now, so he has a word at, a voice at DPI. So we are going to be passing on our feedback in terms of when they start defining the business rules for that accountability model and providing that timely feedback.
Is that it?
Thank you.
No,
I have any questions?
Yes, sir, I do. Ms. Green, earlier in the slide, we were talking a lot of data in there, but one item was when you talk about growth, and you got some schools that unfortunately have some low scores, but they met growth.
Mm-hmm. That's why the proficiency and the growth is really a check and balance kind of thing, because you could have some students that haven't met the mark, but if we're making progress, then at least we know we're moving in the right direction, and so it's like a check and balance.
Well, is it accurate to say that another way to say it is some of these children come into their grade very far behind and they're progressing by more than one grade, but they're still below the mark of where they should be based on what grade they're in?
Yes, sir. They've quite not reached the mark of passing per se the assessment, but they're making progress towards that.
Do we ever release a report just based on growth?
Usually when the school performance grades are published,
yes.
Typically in September or October, that's when the growth measures are also published publicly.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, but I just want to say thank you. That's a lot of work and information that the public needs to look at and know that there's so many people working for the children.
Well, thank you. We're a small department, but I've got a great team. I also want to publicly recognize Dr. Elizabeth Murray, who's our data analyst, who does a lot of work in the schools and really worked hard to prepare this presentation.
No, you did. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda, comprehensive annual financial report. Ms. Small.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, board members. I would like to present this report that was provided to you a couple of weeks ago, our annual financial report. I'm certainly not going to go through the whole thing because that would be a fun time, but just want to present a few highlights to you. These are our financial statements as of June 30th, 2017. After I present those highlights, I'm going to turn this over to our audit firm to present the audit reports, which are also included in this document. The management discussion and analysis in the first section of the report provides a good overview of the financials, and on page 4 specifically goes into analysis of the fund statements, and generally most of your questions to me come from that section, so I wanted to highlight a few things. First of all, the total governmental fund balance at June 30th was $32.7 million, which is a reduction of $3.5 million over the prior year. Of that, $9 million is restricted for use, much of that appropriated for use by you in this year's budget. We also have school funds, required reserves, grant funds that carry over, leaving an unassigned general fund balance of $15.5 million. That's the part that you're legally allowed to appropriate in the future. This represents a 10% decrease over the prior year and is now 6.2% of total governmental expenditures. While this is less than the board's policy goal of 7%, the board did approve the additional appropriation in last year's budget. The state funding increased about 5%, or $6.5 million last year, and local increased 3%, $2.2 million. The total governmental expenditures increased $42.9 million. Most of that was the implementation of the bond program. And proprietary funds, we have two, the Child Nutrition Fund and also our after-school funds, both ended the year at a profit. We have a statistical section in the back that includes 10 years of comparable financial data for lots of different items, but two of note would be our total operating expenditures for the year were $252 million, and our per pupil expenditure grew a little over 6% to $9,662 per pupil. So with that, I just want to take a moment to thank our entire finance team for their hard work and dedicated service throughout the year. Specifically want to recognize Rhonda Turner, who prepared much of this report, and Nancy Braswell, our internal auditor. Both of these ladies worked to facilitate the entire audit and financial statement process, and I just want to thank them for that. This time I'd like to introduce our auditors from Cherry & Beckert. We have Eddie Burke, the audit partner, and he's going to be speaking with you, and along with him is Lonnie Keogh, our audit manager. So I'd like to thank them for their help throughout this, and turn it over to them.
The most difficult part tonight, if I can figure out how to use your PowerPoint presentation. How about that? Good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you tonight. I think this is the first time I've had the opportunity to speak before you. What I would like to do in talking with you tonight in the short period of time that I do have is basically cover 5 areas. First, I'd like to introduce the team that actually worked on the job this year. Secondly, spend just a few minutes going through what our role is as your external auditor and what we do and what our primary responsibilities are as your auditor. Then spend a few minutes going through the key highlights. I've given you the very high level on one slide on what the results were, and then I'll summarize and sort of close things out. And at that point, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have in regards to the audit. As far as the engagement team, for the most part, the engagement team, as far as the ones actually doing the blocking and tackling, were the same. Lonnie is with me tonight. She served as the senior manager on the job, and Andrea King served as the senior. I am a new partner on this particular job as far as your service partner relationship is concerned. Your previous service partner got a promotion about midway through the audit, and I transitioned into that particular role this year. As far as our responsibilities are concerned, it's really threefold. The first is we are required to make sure that we follow the auditing standards that apply to your particular unit. In your particular case, you have your audit done in accordance with governmental auditing standards, and because of the federal and the state dollars you receive, you're required to have what we refer to as a single audit. So our entire audit plan is built around making sure that we comply with those particular standards and requirements that are out there. Secondly, is the expression of opinion. I'll go through those reports in just a second, but there are 4 opinions that are actually included in your financial statements. And then thirdly, from a communications perspective, the standards specifically require that if certain events occur during the audit process, we are required to communicate certain things to the oversight body. We actually do those communications in a separate standalone letter, which has been included as part of your reporting package. As far as the results are concerned, like I said earlier, there's 4 opinions that were expressed. The board did receive an unmodified or clean opinion on all 4 reports. The first report was our opinion on the financial statements. Basically what that is saying, we believe as an independent third party that the numbers that are reflected in the document can be relied upon by third parties. The second report is a yellow book. We refer to it as yellow book report. That is where we come in and we look at the internal control environment at the board, and we also test for specific compliance with North Carolina general statutes. And then the last 2 reports has to do with your compliance with the federal and the state dollars that you are receiving and administering during the year. Those reports are combines 2 different areas. One, the internal control environment over the administration of the programs, and then secondly, over the administration of those particular grants. The board did administer their programs, all programs, materially correct this year. There was no issues with internal control at all. There was one non-material non-compliance having to do with the child nutrition program. It was a small dollar amount, which was considered to be immaterial to the administration of the program. There was no adjusting journal entries that we proposed. There was one past adjusting journal entry. Actually, it's something that came in on the very back end when everything had already been completed, and we elected with management's approval to pass that. It was a very small dollar amount. The significant part of that one piece I would like to say is that the books and records that we received when we started the audit process is pretty much what we opined on. So the numbers that we were given was reliable, that y'all were given throughout the year. There was no disagreements with management, no significant changes in policies. Your estimates that were used in the financial statements were consistently applied, so no particular issue with that. And overall, the audit process went pretty much the way it was planned. We sat down with management on the very front end, lay out a timeline, and for the most part, that timeline was met, and the financial statements were submitted to the your oversight body by the required due date. And then just in summary, clean opinions, no adjusting journal entries, the one past adjusting journal entries. Overall control environment is good at the board. No significant deficiencies or material weaknesses noted. And again, I would like to reiterate, I appreciate all the assistance that we received from not only the finance department, but the other departments that we dealt with this year when we were doing our work. With that being said, that concludes my overall comments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Anyone have any questions?
What kind of testing do you do typically?
Sir?
What kind of testing do you do typically?
Your program, the board is primarily very centered around the federal and the state dollars. We do a lot of testing over eligibility and just whatever the requirements are around those particular programs that we're required to audit. Spend a lot of time in the state funding. We do a lot of confirmation work. We do a lot of vouching. We do a lot, asking a lot of questions. We do a lot of discussions with people internally. We're making sure your subsidiary ledgers tie out. We're making sure your assets are valued properly. I mean, I could go on, but that's basically what we do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Do you have to spend any time in the schools, or do you spend most of your time in the central office and technology?
Primarily, we're spending most of the time in the office.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you, and I want to thank Mary Hazel for the work that she and her staff do to each year to make sure that we get a clean audit and that we stay out of trouble, and she keeps us on the straight and narrow. Thank you.
Just for information, we do an internal audit of the schools every year through Ms. Braswell's department, the internal audit. She's not technically in the finance department, so she does an annual audit of every one of our schools, books, textbooks, technology, and other files.
And we do review all that work. That's part of our procedures to make sure there's nothing that pops out that would raise our risk.
Thank you. All right, next item, Class Size Compliance Committee final report. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. Tonight we're going to present the final report from the Class Size Compliance Committee. You'll recall, actually it's June 6th of this year, the board put together an ad hoc committee, I guess, to review recent legislation regarding the K-3 class size reduction, and also to look at our long-range planning efforts of the district. Specifically, the legislation was enacted at Session Law 2017-19, but it was referred to as House Bill 13, and it included 3 major items: phases in K-3 class size reduction over 2 years, this current school year, 2017-18, and next year, 2018-19, requires accurate and timely reporting and ensures compliance with class size requirements. Specifically dealing with the class size reduction, this year, 17-18, the teacher-student ratio for class size K through 3 is 1 to 20. Next year, for the 2018-19 school year, we're going to reduce that in K to 1 to 18, in 1 to 16, and 2 and 3 would be 1 to 17. I would like to point out that class size first reports were released by DPI actually last month on the 29th, and we are currently in compliance.
We have to sign an affidavit to that effect that we're in compliance.
Specific task for the committee to explore the strategies implemented for this current school year and review school system's long-range plan, and get an update on what we're doing to prepare for our 2020 long-range plan update. Review the status of projects in the 2014 bond program, and also to develop guiding principles and timeline for redistricting. I chaired the committee. However, I think I was more of a facilitator. The committee members did all the hard work, so I would like to recognize them from the Board of Education, Mr. Hayes, Mr. Wortman. Also, Chairman Higgins attended probably, I think, most all of our meetings. From senior staff, Dr. Markley, Dr. Holliday, Dr. Smith, and then Principal of the Year, current Dr. Kefalonitis, and past Dr. Hamilton, and our Elementary Teacher of the Year, Victoria Minshew. Our first meeting was on June 27th. At that meeting, We reviewed the specific requirements of House Bill 13. We discussed some of the potential impacts that it would have on our district and looked at possible strategies for compliance. At that meeting, we also got an update on the projects in the 2014 bond program, and we looked at our long-range planning and what efforts were underway for the 2020 update. At the second meeting on August 10th, we reviewed school capacities. We looked at our current memberships, enrollment, and district maps. It was at that meeting that we decided to split into two subgroups. One subgroup would concentrate on the redistricting items, and the other subgroup would concentrate on compliance strategies. These two subgroups met several more times during the month of August and September, and then reported back to the full group at our final meeting on September 28th. The redistricting subgroup, we focused primarily on 3 items: developing the guiding principles for redistricting. We accelerated, at the request of the committee, the elementary schedule for redistricting, allowing us to post and publish that plan earlier than originally proposed. This would give parents more notice about redistricting. The implementation year stayed the same as 2020-21. Also, at the request of the committee, we put together a schedule for high school and middle school redistricting. And these 3 things were actually approved by the full board at the October 3rd meeting. Just to give you a little update, since the committee meetings, we have been continuing our work and have developed a draft proposal for high school and middle school redistricting. We've actually shared that with the board chairman in November. We shared it with senior staff to get input and comments yesterday, actually. And this week we're sharing it with the secondary principals at the principals meeting on Thursday. We will incorporate their comments and that input, and we have a board work session on December 19th where we'll share that draft with you as well. The process for redistricting is proceeding in accordance with the timeline that the board approved, and we do anticipate a final plan being adopted by the board at the February meeting.
That's just for middle and high school, that February meeting?
That's correct. The compliance strategies subgroup first reviewed some strategies that we're already implementing. We're at a 1 in 20 ratio for K-3 this year, and we wanted to see what strategies were being implemented. Then looking to the following year, 18-19, specifically at 3 schools, Bradley Creek, Parsley, and Sunset Park, evaluating those schools using the same strategies that had been identified, and taking into consideration projected growth and enrollment to see how we could comply with legislation for next year. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Smith, and she'll explain some of these strategies to you in a little more detail.
Well, good evening. As Mr. Anderson shared with you, there were 4 of us that worked on developing these compliance strategies. We had the principal of Bradley Creek Elementary, Dr. Keflanitis. We also had the principal of Parsley Elementary, Dr. Hamilton, and the other school that we looked at was Sunset Park Elementary, and Ms. Michaud helped to facilitate that process. One thing that we found out very early in the process was that this was not going to be a tabletop activity. We needed to physically walk the halls of those schools. So even though we had the floor plans of the schools, it was somewhat misleading, just simply in how the spaces were being used. just because a room had a certain amount of square footage assigned to it. That was not enough to necessarily indicate whether that would be conducive to having 2 teachers in that classroom or creating an opportunity for teachers to work collaboratively. So we quickly, as I said, realized that we needed to schedule time to be in those schools. So as a result of that work, we were able to identify 3 strategies that we thought would work in most of our schools within the district. The first strategy is combination classes, and this is not anything that's new to what principals have done to accommodate uneven numbers of students in a building. Before the current regulations that we're operating under, we were required not to exceed 24 in our K-3 classrooms, and so principals have been utilizing this strategy previously. But in this, we wanted to look at other ways to make it a little more efficient. So if you take a look at the graphics, so there are 2 options when it comes to combination classrooms. The first option is to have students from 2 adjacent grades. They would be grouped into one classroom. So that's our more traditional strategy. So it's not uncommon to have a kindergarten teacher teaching some kindergarten students and then also teaching some first grade students. So that is not uncommon. What is more uncommon and what came about as the result of our work was the option 2. And you'll see the visual for that. So in option 2, you would have 2 classrooms. It would be adjacent grades, and you would have 3 teachers. So in teacher 1's classroom, they would have, for instance, kindergarten students. In teacher 2's classroom, they would have, for instance, first grade students. But in teacher 3's classroom, you would have, well, actually it wouldn't be a classroom, but teacher 3 would have assigned to him or her both kindergarten and first grade students. And under this option or this strategy, those students, the kindergarten students that would be assigned to teacher 3 would reside in teacher 1's classroom. And then the first grade students that would be assigned to teacher 3 would reside in teacher 2's classroom. So you would have 2 adjacent grades being served, 2 classrooms being utilized, but 3 teachers serving those children.
And wouldn't that also allow the compliance that we're looking for as far as class size?
It would. It would give principals flexibility to keep those numbers under that threshold. And we would have to assume the numbers of the grade which had the largest representation. So in this situation, if we had more kindergarten students, then the cap would be 18. If we had more first grade students, then the cap would be 16. We also found, as I said, we realized very quickly that we needed to physically be in the buildings. We found at Parsley that this worked as a strategy. If there were, worked best as a strategy, there were Jack and Jill bathrooms. So there was a pass-through between the 2 classrooms. And again, this is not what we traditionally do. Traditionally, the first option presented to you where we have 2 grades, we have 1 room, and we have 1 teacher. But we knew that we needed to look at other options to accommodate, guess the unpredictability of how children come to us. They don't come to us in neat packages of 18 or 17 or 16. They come as they come. And so this would be one strategy that schools could use to accommodate those numbers. Another strategy would be, and it says team teaching on the slide, but actually that should say shared teacher. So here you would have the same grade, 2 rooms, and 3 teachers. So here you might have 3rd grade, and you'd have 2 classrooms that would be serving third grade students, but you'd have 3 teachers. So teacher 1 would have students assigned to them, teacher 2 would have students assigned to them, and teacher 3 would have students assigned to them, and those students would be dispersed across those 2 rooms. That is also a strategy that's currently being used at Parsley. And teacher 3 would serve students in both of those rooms. It definitely requires teachers to collaboratively plan, to be willing to probably work a little more closely than we have traditionally expected teachers to work together. But we're currently seeing this happen in our schools, and when teachers elect this strategy and come to this with the understanding that this is in the best interest of our children, we've seen this work. Definitely not optimal in what we want to have happen, because of course you've got larger numbers of children in a space that was probably designed for less. But this is one strategy that would allow us to say under the class size restrictions. And then the final strategy that we talked about, and again, this slide says shared teachers, but here it is actually the team teaching strategy, and I do apologize to you for those errors on that slide. With team teaching, you have 1 room and 2 teachers. So you would look for a large space. What we're finding now, a lot of times your art classrooms, your music rooms are larger spaces just in terms of their square footage, and you would assign 2 teachers in that room to serve their children. So you'd have 1 room and 2 teachers. So this would be your team teaching space.
I just want to be clear.
Yes, and I apologize because this is...
No, well, I mean, because I know when I came to the meeting, this was all very confusing to me.
Yes.
What we were up to and what we were trying to do. And to be clear, what we're trying to do is to utilize our existing buildings most efficiently by being able to take a kindergarten or a kindergarten and first grade class, oversize them, but because we've got 3 teachers, we meet the requirements that the state has set forth. Is that correct?
It is. We're also trying to the best of our ability, maintain the opportunities for quality instruction. So, and there's not, because our buildings are so very different, there's not going to be one strategy that simply works for every building or for every classroom.
But our main challenge right now is the fact that by cutting class size, if the state stays with that, in theory, we need another elementary school, if not 2 elementary schools, to be able to absorb, to be able to put 1 teacher in a classroom by themselves. So what we're trying to do is to avoid the necessity of having to build additional classrooms by combining students and giving additional teachers.
Yes, we're trying to use our existing space in such a way that we are accommodating our student numbers.
Okay, I just want to be
We're
clear.
not avoiding it. It's reality is that we don't have it.
Well, then
And
we
we're
are
not going to
coming
build
up-
it in 6 months.
So we've got to find strategies to do it. I mean, was not suggesting that we were avoiding it, but the facts are we're not going to have enough money to build another elementary school, nor could we get one built in another year. And we've got to figure out ways in which we can serve the students within the criteria of what the state legislature has told us we have to meet. So by doing this, as she suggested, using the big classrooms, any of the big classrooms we can find, and possibly putting 30-some kids in a classroom, but putting 2 teachers into that classroom instead of having 2 classrooms with 18 and 18 and 2 teachers.
Reality is the state is that this is coming.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate a change of heart at the legislative level as it relates to this. So as we've always done, we will find ways to make it work. And we may get some surprises, creativity-wise. I think Dr. Hamilton will tell you that her two teachers who were team teaching at Parsley has been a pleasant surprise in terms of how that's worked, but that was a voluntary decision to do that, and it's two teachers who have paired together very well.
I just want to be clear of why we're doing this.
And Dr. Markle, that's what I was going to say. These strategies that you're talking about today have already, some of them have already been voluntarily adopted. Dr. Hamilton,
Correct.
what she did at Parsley, goes along with what these strategies are. I think Ms. Minshew also said that at Sunset Park, they were also coordinating with teachers. And so these strategies aren't something that next year is going to change everything. We've already voluntarily started implementing some of this stuff to.
So we have, and also what we've done, spaces that we traditionally would not have been teaching spaces are now becoming teaching spaces. So at Parsley, had the opportunity to visit the music classroom where there aren't any desks. There are just a lot of children in a very small space, but the teacher is making it work because that's the only space that's available to her. I think as a result of this, we're making decisions that we probably would not otherwise, but given our situation, we're trying to make the best decisions we can for our children.
There is a long-term, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, and you kind of referred to the situation at Parsley. Have we noticed in any case that these changes have been, in fact, positive ones, as opposed to, well, these are things we're just having to make work? And are we able to keep any sort of data to determine? And I know these are different classes and different students, so it's very difficult because you're judging. You can't judge what from students that are now obviously in first grade with students who are now in kindergarten. But are any of the changes positive ones? Have we noticed any kind of benefit from that?
Since we have Dr. Hamilton here, I'd love for her to come up and speak specifically about her school. But what I'll say,
put her on the spot, but
Sorry. She's a superstar. She can handle it. Oh, yes, please. But just as a general comment, I will say what I've observed is just the collegiality between our teachers and their willingness to work on this. I've heard no complaints. I've just been a part of a lot of problem solving and folks who understand that this is something we have to do. And since it's something we have to do, they're coming at it with the right attitude. But I'm sure she can speak about some more specifics.
Good evening. Thanks for asking. I'd love for you to come visit. It's awesome. I think one thing that's made it successful is that we got together as a whole staff to problem solve what we were going to do about our space needs, and they're the ones that created this, and then they are the ones who chose who was going to work together in a co-teaching kind of situation. And in all the situations, they are in a new space. So no one went in on anyone else's current classroom. So no one had that territorial feeling about where they were. So they had to go in and create it together. So I do think those things helped. I have 6 teachers that are doing that right now, and they all report to me that this is their best year teaching ever. They feel like they are meeting student needs better than they ever have before. They feel like that they have the opportunity to mix and match the children better, provide more differentiated instruction for them. And we are slated to get to mobile units sometime soon, and nobody wants to go to the mobile units. They all want to stay together and continue teaching. So that's been rewarding, and I think it's just because they had choice and voice in that, and they are really, really enjoying it. We have had no incidences of increased behavior or anything like that because of more children being in a classroom. We don't really have anything negative.
Been very positive.
It has been very
children,
positive
for
for
the
us.
students as well.
Yes, it has.
And
Yes, yes. Thank you for asking.
What is the response of the parents of those students?
Well, we had some apprehension, not a lot. We tried to really communicate a lot via writing and phone calls and face-to-face. And we've had some people who have expressed some concerns, but we've listened and talked, and we haven't heard anything lately. That was all on the onset when it was still an unknown, that we were hearing those things.
And she's got the large classrooms that make this two-person in a classroom facilitation work. Gregory would be another school that has large classrooms that you could do this. At some schools that don't have those larger classrooms, they're going to have to look at one of the other options. The other piece is heading into budget season, we still don't have a funding formula defined for art and music. So teaching-wise, we're in a better shape than we were a year ago, but in terms of where we are in terms of art and music, we're still waiting to see what the exact funding formula is going to look like on those.
You pushed to get that formula, correct?
I am.
Okay.
I have a question, but it's more for Mr. Anderson. Isn't there a problem, I thought at Parsley in particular, with pervious, impervious, as far as mobile units, don't we run into a problem there, Mr. Anderson?
Well, you'll recall when we first built Parsley, we actually designed that school as a low-density site, so the impervious area could not exceed 25%. And throughout design, we were very close to that. Since Parsley was constructed, we've added mobile units and increased the pervious area, and as part of that, we converted the site to a high density. So that's no longer an issue.
So you just,
Well,
how do you do that?
Well, low density uses a lot more drainage, swales for infiltration. There's not a retention pond that you would.
We've made those changes, which would make it.
We've made those changes, and it's a high density site, and so we do. And when it was permitted, like we always do, we'll actually design the pond to accommodate more impervious area than is currently there. So it takes some future expansion into consideration.
Thank you.
Lastly, catch up here. I just wanted to talk briefly next steps or really outcomes from this committee. We are implementing redistricting in accordance with the guiding principles and the timeline. We're presenting the compliance strategies. This presentation, as well as probably a little more in-depth discussion of the compliance strategies to the elementary principals Thursday, December 7th, as I think it was clear that there's not one size that fits all schools. So it's important that our elementary principals start thinking about their plans for next school year. And to assist them with this, we've actually put a website together, and we're going to make available to them not only this presentation, but floor plans of their buildings, capacities of their buildings, and enrollment projections for next year. The one fortunate thing in all of this, we are graduating this year one of the largest fifth grade classes that we've seen in a long time. So that's good news for K-3 compliance next year. It's bad news for our middle schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have one.
Yes.
When you look at the projections that you have for next year, you look at what you've learned through, and I applaud you for thinking out of the box already. But when you look at all of that, do you have an idea of how many additional classrooms you'll have to add via modulars?
Well, we right now are planning, we have two additional mobile units going in at Parsley, bring their total to 7. And we have 2 mobile units that are going in at Murrayville, which would bring their total to 5. Those are the 2 largest elementary schools we have. We don't have any plans beyond that. The plan is to implement these strategies within the space we have, plus those modular units.
Additionally, if we need to, taking art and music classes and converting them into classrooms.
And then the second question is, when you start doing the math that y'all have to do to figure out meeting ratios, how many additional teachers are we going to have to hire?
That's going to depend largely on what the state comes down with as a funding formula for the arts positions. because we'll have to decide if it doesn't meet our current needs, are we going to have to ask for additional funding? Are we going to have to share teachers? So that's one I can't give you an answer to until the state gives me an answer.
If they do what you expect them to do, what's been proposed to this point, what would the answer be?
I think, and Mary Hazel, we can make it work. If they fund us at our current level, it'll be tight, but we can make it work.
Requirement for next year would be 50 additional K-3 classroom teachers. What we're hoping, as Dr. Markley alluded to, is that that we'll receive additional funding for the art, music, and PE that are currently funded with those 50 slots. So that's kind of what we're waiting on.
Yeah, we would swap the positions we're currently funding for elementary teachers and then use the funding, the direct funding for those positions from the state in the future.
So,
Any other
said
questions?
another way, then if the state's not as flexible as they might appear, we would have to use math, art, and music teachers to fill some of that void.
Or ask for additional funding, yes.
Or ask for additional funding from the county commissioners.
Yes.
When you're talking about if the state doesn't fund enough teachers for the reduced class size?
All right.
Well,
No, I assume they're gonna fund, I assume they're gonna fund enough teachers for the reduced class size because they've mandated it, and, you know, if they know how many K and first, and second, and third graders we have.
That's not really the issue there, because we're using our allotment.
I understand for art, PE, and
Right.
music, but, I mean, the discussion becomes, does the state legislature fund those, as I have heard they have talked about potentially doing, don't know what they're going to do. But, I mean, as far as teaching teachers, we should be okay, right?
Right, because right now, we have some flexibility in our allotment that won't be there next year. We're using that flexibility to fund art, music, and PE.
Right.
So when the state says, here's your hard caps, we have enough elementary teachers to do that.
Right.
But then I have a pool of specialty teachers that I've been funding out of the allotment. If the state does not fund those at the same level that I'm currently using them, then I've got several choices. I'll have to, you're looking at asking the county for additional funding.
Right.
You're looking at a reduction in those positions.
Or share it somehow.
Well, it's still, I would have to reduce teachers and
Well,
share.
Yeah.
It wasn't years ago, the allotment was separated too. You had teachers and then you had specialties.
Yeah, there used to be an old program called the Basic Education Program called BEP. And so when they did away with the BEP allotment directly, they rolled that into the allotments they gave to districts.
And they're, in essence, trying to go back to what they were doing before.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
We think. Any other questions?
No.
Anybody have any other questions? All right, thank you. I have been asked to take a short break,
5-minute break.
5 minutes. We're almost done with the agenda. So.
True 5 minutes.
True 5-minute break, starting right now. Can you put the clock up on?